So you know we've talked before about how Chris Chibnall has a tendency to cram about 3 episodes worth of plot into one episode and as a result nothing gets properly developed? Well, Doctor Who Flux follows that same philosophy, only this time he's trying to squeeze about 4 series worth into just 6 episodes. So Chibnall has kind of thrown me an awkward curveball here. If you remember in my initial reaction to the Halloween apocalypse, I said I wouldn't be making a proper review until after the series had concluded, since I was looking at it as one continuous story and therefore it would only be fair to judge it as a whole. Well, it seems Chibnall couldn't quite make up his mind whether he wanted to go serialised or episodic with this thing. While it is a continuous story, there are also episodes within it, like War of the Sontarans, that are largely self-contained. So I guess now I'll be judging it as a whole and then judging some bits of it individually, which will get their own separate videos, so keep a lookout for those in the coming weeks. The fact that there are self-contained stories within Doctor Who Flux is actually my first major criticism, because when you're telling a multi-part epic involving an urgent threat that is literally destroying the universe, it kind of undermines what's at stake if you keep on cutting away to tell smaller stories that don't directly involve that threat. It's like if every other episode of the Daleks' master plan was the Feast of Stephen. The other main issue of the Flux is that it is poorly defined as a threat. Initially we see it obliterating whole planets, leaving nothing behind in its wake, but then later on we see Vinder's home has been turned to rubble, supposedly by the Flux. So does it vaporise planets or not? It's hard to be invested in something if you don't establish any basic fundamental rules about how it works and what exactly is at stake. Even at the end it's like Chibnall still can't decide what the whole deal with the Flux was. I mean, wasn't it supposed to have already destroyed most of the universe? But I guess we're just going to ignore that and head off on more adventures like everything's back to normal. Mind you, at least that aspect of the story gets more of a satisfying resolution than the stuff with Storm and Azure. We never find out why Azure was seemingly disguised as someone living in the Arctic Circle and what any of that was about, nor is it clear what they were doing with the passenger form or why they kidnapped Diane. I honestly feel bad for the actors who play the Ravagers because both have amazing screen presence, but I'm still befuddled as to what their plan even is. Something about releasing Time from the Temple of Atropos because Time is a sentient being now apparently, and also wanting revenge on Division for ambiguous reasons. I don't know, honestly their main function in this story just seems to be standing around saying and doing mysterious cryptic things that are never properly explained. On the subject of Division, we do get to learn a bit more about the shady organisation, even if what we learn doesn't make a lot of sense. The Doctor's past lives are still largely left shrouded in mystery, and as much as Council of Geeks keeps screaming about payoff, it honestly doesn't bother me if not all of that stuff does get revealed. I mean, let's not forget the whole message of the Timeless Children was about how none of it matters anyway, and you should stop being so obsessed about it. But we do discover the Division was created on Gallifrey and is basically like a master puppeteer interfering with the development of planets and species across time and space. This might have been an interesting point at which to draw parallels with the Doctor herself, since you know interfering in other worlds is kind of what she is all about. But of course that would have been too deep for Chibnall, so instead we get dialogue like this.
Morality was always your flaw. Morality is a strength.
Yeah, real thought-provoking stuff there, you did good. Of course we also find out that Division created the Flux in order to destroy the universe out of fear of the Doctor. But if that's the case, then why does Tecteun have the Doctor taken out of the universe before the final Flux event and try to convince her to rejoin Division? Perhaps we may have understood her motivations better if Chibnall had devoted more screen time to this aspect of the story as opposed to setting up yet another random subplot about the Grand Serpent infiltrating UNIT that serves little to no function in the grand scheme of the narrative. Yeah, if there's one thing above all else holding Doctor Who Flux back, it's the sheer amount of plot material that Chris Chibnall keeps trying to stuff into it. Seriously, this thing is so bloated that it's toppling under its own weight. If you take the Flux in isolation, or the Ravagers, or the stuff about Division, or the Grand Serpent, or the Sontarans, any one of those could have easily sustained a multi-part story on its own, but for some incomprehensible reason Chibnall attempts to do all of these ideas at the same time, and as a result none of it has any room to breathe. Take Dan for instance. I said in my Halloween Apocalypse reaction that I'd reassess my opinion on him depending on how his character was explored in the coming episodes, but the simple fact is his character hasn't been explored because there just wasn't any time. He's still just a down on his luck guy from Liverpool who's along for the ride, and frankly out of all the Chibnall companions so far, he's the weakest as it stands. We do get some vague introspection about his guilt over leaving Diane behind and her getting kidnapped for reasons that are never explained, but given how awkward these two are around each other and the fact that she just just blows him off at the end anyway, it's hard to feel much investment in their relationship. The subplot between Bel and Vinder, on the other hand, I will say is a lot more effective. There's nothing particularly clever or groundbreaking here, but the simple tale of two lovers separated and trying to find each other in a crisis is something that really resonates in the current world in which we live. And I like how when the pair are finally reunited, it's nicely understated. This subplot is easily the strongest element of the series, primarily because it's about the only thing fleshed out enough for us to really be invested in. Now, there is a strong possibility that COVID had a role to play in Series 13 being the way it is. If Doctor Who Flux was originally conceived to be a longer story, then that might go some way to explaining why it is so bloated. However, the more I think about it, the more I think this is still at least partly on Chibnall, because we've seen before how he has a tendency to fill out the runtime by cramming more and more stuff in as opposed to fleshing out the characters or the world his story takes place in. This is really no different to what we've previously seen from Chibnall. The only difference is this time he has 6 episodes to work with, and something tells me if you gave him any more episodes he'd just make this thing even more convoluted rather than using them to develop Dan's character or explore Tecteun's motivation or do any of the things that would actually give meaning to any of the events taking place beyond the most basic surface level. Either way, it doesn't change the fact that Doctor Who Flux is a jumbled, overstuffed, underdeveloped mess, and we can only hope that the upcoming specials provide a more satisfying conclusion to Jodie Whitaker's tenure as the Doctor. I'm Midnight, and I travel in time and space. And trains.